Normal talking volume. This looks a little better.
That is not your normal talking volume.
No,
That is a slightly put forward, exaggerated version of normal talking form.
Slightly.
Perhaps just a bit, but
bit.
it's a thing you got to do for the podcast.
For the podcast, you have to have your podcast voice. Which, I'm kind of glad I never did that.
That would get annoying to listen to.
The reason why this is a
More than
podcast and not
usual.
like a video talk show is because we all have faces for radio boys. As they say.
Yes, sir.
Well, we are back from our Thanksgiving hiatus.
Oh, are we doing this? Do we have the levels all figured out?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We're all sorted. Well, just to be sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry
we're
for the detour there.
But-
That was fine.
But, yes. Back from the Thanksgiving hiatus, which we could have recorded it again, but we just figured,
It would have
Let's
been
take a break.
back to
A little
back
rest.
days and figuring out
Yeah.
topics and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, it's a holiday week.
yep.
We'll give you a break from us.
A little bit, yes. I'm told people need that now and again. Usually with a door slammed in my face. And, but yes, I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. I certainly
and
did.
safe with all
safe.
the stuff going on.
Yep, indeed. It was pretty chill. I mean, our family, we never go to like big gatherings to begin with.
Mhm.
It's usually just people come over and hang out. So I was at home for 4 days.
We have
That
an
was
aunt and
nice.
uncle we usually go to, but and even then it's a tight gathering. But
Mhm.
we just stayed home. The weekend after Thanksgiving, your brother-in-law showed up
Mhm.
for a couple days, and he was fun to hang out with.
Your sister-in-law came over for Thanksgiving as well.
Oh, cool! Must have been in town.
I was in too much of a hurry to talk. Ow.
A bad sip there.
Yeah, it was bad. Ugh, bad swallow.
So, how was the road trip home Thanksgiving?
We have Riley back
who
in the
is
studio.
Yeah,
guys.
Riley
In the
is
studio.
in person, in the studio.
Which
Glad
is
to
our-
be here.
Den in the basement. But
Well, it's not really, it's not kind. Well, it's more of a den now than it ever was.
yeah,
Well, that's because
James
of the
has
wall
this
of
panorama
monitors.
of monitors over here.
I use about these are the ones I can use practically. Like
He
these
said,
four.
audibly gesturing.
Audibly gesturing to a
These-
table about
these
6 feet
two I
wide.
seldom look at, admittedly, but I kind of want to rig a setup where I can have them all stacked, like on a shelf, so I can look up. And I need to figure out, like with some games. I know I've seen a video where somebody took The Witcher 3, and they had multiple monitors.
When they did some field of view stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to figure out how to do that just for one game, just to see how it works. That'd be kind of fun.
You got to have nice monitors, and it really helps to have borderless monitors for that.
Right. Having just a bunch of blocks everywhere sounds like the DS, but worse.
Yeah, that just sounds like the DS with extra steps.
And you can't even touch it. So
No.
well, you could get a touchscreen monitor and then like do a whole bunch of stuff but no, never mind. Don't do that. That's not a
The
cool
only thing I
idea.
don't like about this setup is how dusty my desk gets. Well, part of that is because I cleared out the computer with some computer duster the other day.
My room at the seminary gets so dusty. Like, I have to clean out the front panel intakes for my computer every week.
Dang.
It's awful.
Got the old seminary ceiling dust crap.
I don't know what I think my ceiling is just like a normal ceiling, but I think the thing is that there's just no ventilation. So
Yeah.
it doesn't whisk dust particles around. It all just settles.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of what
So-
happened with the old Newman Center,
Yeah.
like that apartment we lived in.
Oh yeah.
It got really like in
you
2
could
weeks.
dust weekly and it would still have this
film.
thick 1/16 of an inch thick film.
Yeah.
Probably mostly asbestos.
Yeah.
Probably explains a lot about us today.
Yeah. But it was mostly, the whole building there was no central air. It was all like water pumped to radiators throughout the building. Very old setup. Very much
build-
not a thing anymore.
I don't know what it is about old buildings that just makes them super dusty.
Yeah.
Like, even if maintained normally.
Yeah.
It probably is the ventilation.
What you got to do with those sorts of things is just have an air compressor in your room,
Mm-hmm.
and you just every
Have
week you
it-
just
Have it go
It
off
works in
every
the shop.
15 minutes. That's the air compressor.
Yeah.
that's the air compressor.
I think if they should have like a clock where every hour it makes that noise.
Like a cuckoo clock, but it's a compressor clock.
yeah. Brrrr. And you have to hear it through the whole building.
Oh, yes.
No matter like over like the intercom if they have that one set up like that, because the student, every generation needs to experience the pernicious noise of the air compressor.
Do they, though?
No,
I think that's one thing.
it'll live on.
We're
in
leaving
our
in the
hearts.
past of that Newman Center
Yeah.
for the better.
That and the tiles popping out of the floor.
What
and
else is Father Cheney gonna do to troll kids? Like when they're sitting.
Flicker the lights when they're not paying attention.
Particularly when they're vacuuming that room.
Yeah, or do it raw. You know, like the
He will find a way.
yes.
Fair
because,
enough.
with you.
because that
Fair
is his
enough.
way.
This is the way.
This is the way. I was setting that up.
Yep. Just this
Nice little softball there.
Yep.
Thank you. Slow pitch. We're getting in.
Mhm.
We're
Figuring
warming up.
We're warming up the chemistry again.
Warming up, boys. Speaking of warming up, it has not really been that cold lately.
Well, up here,
Yeah.
you drove back to Minnesota for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and there was like standing snow over there.
Yeah.
But over
because-
here, it's been, well, by our standards, downright tropical.
Yeah. Last week, well, like when they got snow, we got rain that night, I
Right.
think. But it was weird because I drove home for Thanksgiving like that Wednesday, and I go all the way, roads are perfect. I get into like the gravel road where my parents live, and it's like a sheet of ice. Super random. Like there's no snow on the grass or anything. It's just like the road is solid white.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So I sort of had to hit like not quite floor it, but really hit the gas on our driveway because my parents' house is on top of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just a patch of ice right in the middle there. So I was like,
Oof.
had to build up the momentum and just kind of go for it.
Were the roads pretty free and clear all the way up from
Yes, they
Indiana?
They were. I mean, southern Indiana doesn't get any snow pretty
Mhm.
much as a rule.
Like this is probably as cold as it gets during the winter.
Yeah,
Our temperatures right now.
I don't think it got below 35 the whole time I was there.
Mm.
Granted, we're not into January yet.
No,
but
January is when the real stuff happens.
The
Mhm.
real, we might get below 30 down there, maybe.
Ooh,
But
Dang.
that's the freezing
the
point
only
of
place
water.
I saw snow on the whole drive was just past Winona,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
which
Mhm.
is really weird because it's, I don't know why.
Almost
they-
Iowa.
No,
Did
it's
you drive
not.
through Iowa or did you
No,
drive
I didn't
through
drive
Illinois?
through Iowa. I stayed in La Crosse.
Oh, that's right. You went to Wisconsin.
Mhm.
So
That's where he got all that
the-
spotted cow and stuff.
Oh yeah. We should probably put that in the fridge
well,
It'd probably be better that.
before Saturday, or when this podcast come out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it'll be in the past when the podcast comes out.
Yeah, a lot of things will be in the past when this podcast comes out. That's just the way it goes every week when you record.
This is
in
the
advance.
way.
Yeah.
when it will have been present day Saturday.
Yes.
Present day 2020, which is only for another month.
Yeah. See,
We'll have to start saying present day 2021.
mm-hmm.
We will.
Which
That,
doesn't quite roll off the tongue as
that
well.
adds this whole different syllable.
At what point do we drop the 20 and just say the decades like they did back in the 20th century? Like when does it become the 20s? Back in the 20s.
When we can say back in the 20s.
Yeah.
But that's what he's asking.
Yeah. When,
When,
right.
when can we
When-
start saying back in the 20s?
When the
Mhm.
20s are over.
I guess. The early 20s, late
Did
20s.
they call it the 80s when they were in the 80s?
I don't think they did.
I think
I don't
referring
know.
to a
I'd have to
decade
ask somebody who's alive.
by a decade number
Yeah.
is exclusively a past tense thing.
Who?
We are in current year until
Until we're not.
Yeah.
and then it's the teens.
Like,
the
Us
20
right
teens.
now talking about like the 2000s and 2010s is like people older than us talking about the 80s and 90s when we were little. I was listening to a podcast and there was these Iraq veterans who were like, the kids who are being sent to Afghanistan right now weren't born when it was invaded. I was like, holy
Oof.
ooh, wow, that's how long that's been going on, folks. But we're not going to go to politics or geopolitical whatnot.
No, it was just a
That was just like,
reference.
sort of a frame of reference. It's like, dang, there are, like, even my nephews, like the oldest one was born in 2009, so that seems like a while ago already.
When did they start referring to decades like the 20s or the 40s?
I don't know, because
Probably
you
wasn't
think every century where the dates are commonly thought of, you would think that you'd think that they would.
I think
that,
more than 2 centuries out, you start to lose grasp of what exactly happened in what decade.
Mhm.
Right.
People
You
weren't
can-
really paying attention because not everybody was literate to the point where that mattered. Like, I imagine there was probably a point, like in the early 1800s, where there was a good shot that a lot of the people you talked to just anywhere on the street didn't know what year it was.
So I feel like referring to a decade by the tens place year it happened in is really just, I think it would probably be a decade
Retrospective.
removed.
It was like kind of
from
a
it, at least,
retrospective.
because then it's not like last year or a couple years ago. It's back in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's all the way back somewhere,
Yeah.
you could say back in the early 2000s.
So
Or
are
back
we going
in-
to say back in 21 in 2 years from now? And just drop the 20? 21?
Probably at some point when we're old geezers reminiscing about the one time we had a
Yeah,
podcast.
back in 21. Think it were. I think it were. I think it are.
It occurred to me when I was writing my date in the workbook when I was working at Newman today, that next year we will have 2 palindromic dates.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have
December
12, 22, 21,
Uh-huh.
and then 12, 11, 21. Because
Yes.
1, 2, 1, 1, 2,
Yeah.
1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1.
I think, what was it, 2012 was the last year we had a 12, 12, 12, like a 3 numbers deal.
Because you
'Cause you
really
can't
can't,
do that after
after
12.
12.
Right, yeah, because there's...
You don't have a 13, 14 month calendar.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No. That is not how we operate. or how
Although
the
I
sun-
wouldn't put it past 2020. Let's be
Yeah,
real.
we just add an extra...
January is the 13th month of
I think that was
2020.
one of the early pandemic memes where it's like January or December 31st, 2020, midnight.
I don't think it was an early pandemic thing. I think that was
Kinda midway.
Kind of mid
Midway when it felt like it wouldn't end.
Yeah. My attitude, everyone's like, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. It's like, yeah, well, let's put our effort into making sure that 2021 doesn't suck. Because if we just assume that because it goes from one day to another and it's in a different year.
Magical transition point.
That's
Yeah.
what we call melioristic optimism, kids.
Ooh,
Ooh.
Fancy words.
Long words.
long words. I like that. You know what else is a long word? Palladian. We are the Palladian Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
What are we talking about today?
Today, I decided well in advance that, that we would be talking that we would be talking about the movie Wonder Woman.
Yes.
That released in
As we discussed long in advance, and I totally remembered
yes,
that we
yes.
said we were going to do. Yes.
It released
Wonder
back
Woman.
in 2017.
back
as-
in 17.
Back in 17.
Back in the summer of 17.
Will we ever refer to 2009 as like 09? Back in 06.
I think I've heard
when
some
I
people
was 8.
unironically say that. I'm like, please stop.
Please stop. No, this was back in 2017 when after DC was trying to really hard to play catch up with Marvel after releasing Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice and just before Justice League and Jason Momoa stuff. And
Jason Mimosa.
I'm of the opinion that this is the best of their DC Extended Universe offerings, which really isn't saying much when it's standing next to Suicide Squad.
But it's pretty good.
But it's still a quality movie.
Yes. Well, tell us about the Wonder Woman film.
So, once upon a time in like ancient Greek times, when like Zeus and stuff was happening, because that's a thing that happens in Wonder Woman,
But
'cause-
not Huncules.
No, not Huncules. We're not talking about Huncules.
No.
We are talking about, like, there was this war with the gods and stuff, right? Because Ares is like, I like war. War's cool. Let's have war with everybody. And he, like, manipulates all the humans into having war with each other. And Zeus is like, no, maybe don't with the war thing. Let's create the Amazons, a race of all women to be like, let's not just warriors, but also like a symbol of peace and love for the men to emulate and follow. But they don't, because they're men under the influence of Ares and such. And so wars and stuff. And
How about peace? Fun fact, no.
Right. And so after that whole thing doesn't really work,
Ares kills like most of the gods.
Yeah, and it's not cool. But they like seal him away using
Something.
some like Zeus's power or something. And in case he ever comes back, Zeus leaves with the Amazons, who are now on a hidden island called Themyscira. He leaves with them the ultimate godslayer weapon to kill Ares should he ever show up again and start causing war and stuff. Because if he shows up again, there's going to be like the world's biggest war, like a war like no other, a great war, if you will.
Yes.
So fast forward to modern day 1910s times when we got World War I going on. Wonder Woman has grown up, she's a young woman on Themyscira now, like being trained as like a warrior princess in secret by like her aunt, because her mom's like, don't train her as a warrior princess. That's not something I want from my daughter. And like her aunt's all like, but she's kind of gotta because of reasons, plot twisty reasons.
It's because of who she is. Who is she? No, we can't tell the audience that. It's the
who
first
is she?
fact.
Well, and her mom's all like, Wonder Woman asks, "Where did I come from, Mom?" And her mom's like, "Well, I sculpted you out of clay." And then Zeus said, "Yeah, that could be your child. I'll give it life," which is, I believe, her Golden Age origin story for realsies. Like that's actually how the 1940s comic like explained her origin. That's apparently where Amazon babies come from.
Or at least that particular
version, and that's the version they tell us at the beginning.
That's the most G-rated version.
Right. Anyway, so she's all becoming warrior princess Diana. And then, was there an important thing that came up?
Guy crashes a plane.
Between then and Guy crashing plane, I don't think there's anything really that happens.
Well, her mom is kind of trying to hold her back and try to keep her sheltered, and she's like, I want to do big important things,
because the Amazons are made to be these
big warriors
that like bring peace to men through strength and beauty and love and stuff.
Javelin and spear skills.
But then a guy crashes a plane into the island, which is like hidden under a invisible dome thing.
He's being chased after by
kind of like Wakanda.
Yeah,
it's like Greek Wakanda.
Yeah, it's a lot more flatbread.
Is that gonna be an episode title?
Greek
Wakanda.
Greek Wakanda.
Done.
Cool.
So yeah.
But it turns out, Germans. This guy is a spy who has been being chased by Germans from World War I, because that's the time period we're in, even though the original comic was a World War II thing, but Captain America had already happened, and they didn't want to feel like they were copying that.
Modern day 1918 or whatever.
Something like that. So the Amazon warriors, they defeat the Germans who were chasing the guy, with some casualties, because they got guns.
Including her aunt who trained her.
Yes, which
jumps
was
in front of a gun for
big
her.
sad.
Because apparently guns can kill Amazonians.
Well, they're guns.
Yeah, that's true.
But they keep the spy guy as their prisoner, and his name is Steve.
Chris Pine, but Steve works too.
Yeah, Steve Trevor. He's like a
Steve.
And they question him using the lasso of truth to get the truth out of him, because it's a lasso that if you're tied up in it, you have to not lie.
Imagine if a glow stick was a rope.
Yes.
That is the lasso of truth.
I was going to combine glow stick and rope, but that doesn't sound... that didn't come out nice.
Glow stick spaghetti.
Glow spaghetti.
Glospetti. Anyway.
Glospetti.
Glockenspiel. Anyway.
Now we've transitioned to something else. But
Yes,
anyway,
this thing.
after questioning him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm from this great big war. Like, you haven't heard about it because it's kind of the big war."
We are cut off from the outside world. What do you think we know about?
Right. And they're like, "No, let's not mess with the affairs of men because men are kind of awful. They're the reason we're hiding on this island."
Diana is an adult by this point. By the
Yeah,
way.
at this point she's like in 20-something.
She's like, well, wait, there's death and suffering. Ares has got to be behind this. We got to go take him out. And they're like, no, we're going to stay out of this.
It's a wee bit more complicated than that. And she's like, no. Ares is bad guy. Let us grab God Killer, find Ares, kill him. War over, everyone's happy.
Mm-hmm.
And her and Steve hang out, and she's all like curious about the outside world. He's all like awkward because it's nothing but women around, and he's like, what do I even?
Yeah. It's like, well, I was trying to take a bath, so could you please not? But
There's awkward scenes. It's
Yeah.
like, what? You had to make it
You
awkward,
had-
didn't you, Hollywood?
you had to, didn't you?
Yeah, you just had to.
You just had to.
Anyway, so without the permission of her mother, Wonder Woman steals the Godslayer sword apparently, and also Wonder Woman costume with significantly less stars on the skirt, but still, and no like W's. It's like an eagle symbol now, but it's like also very
W-ish.
much double W.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so she gets the gear and the guy, and they get in a boat and start heading
As
off
well as like
to
the
the war.
bracers.
Right, she's got like these golden bracelets and the lasso of truth and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like she's all decked out with all the bells and
Wonder
whistles,
Woman things.
iconic Wonder Woman things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before she
Slightly
goes, her
more
mom's all like,
practical than her
"If you
traditional
leave
fashion.
now, you can never come back. You know that, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know." And so they hug and say goodbye, and then they leave. And they arrive on their little dinghy in London,
Like
which-
you do.
like you do. I like overnight because
Like you do.
apparently,
Because we sailed from Greece, which is presumably somewhere where this
like somewhere in
island
the
is.
Mediterranean,
They
right?
didn't even have like an Indiana Jones like map montage.
Dun, da, 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 with like the
Da, da,
dotted line.
da.
No, they just kind of. She fell asleep and she woke up and oh look, London. It's and so they get to London. They talk to the United Nations. There was no UN guys. It was just like the army guys.
This is the London War Office people.
Right. They go to the London War Office while
They had to dress her up in clothes that looked more Victorian England.
right. So there's a lot more. A
Or
lot
no,
of
it's world.
It's not Victoria.
No,
not,
it is.
not anymore.
It's World War I England.
Slightly post Victorian. Anyway,
The point is they have like this little fish out of water sequence with
she's trying to lug a sword
Steve
a
and
shield
Steve's
around.
assistant, who's a like pretty big what's her name? I'm
Pretty
very-
big character, but what's her name again?
Yeah,
Must
Edda.
be
I
Edda.
believe.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Very.
She's actually
memorable.
a recurring character from the comics too.
Okay.
And this is so it's like they're incorporating a lot of the staple characters from Wonder Woman's like mythos. Anyway, so her and Steve and Diana, they all kind of hang out in London. They beat up a couple of German spies trying to get the information that Steve has. Steve goes to the London War Office and shows the people
The Germans are
what's going
working on this new type of gas that's going to cause a lot of casualties. That gas masks can't protect you from, apparently, or can they? I forget.
No, the point is that they can't.
Oh, yep.
Um,
Because I mean, gas attacks have been a thing in World War I up until this point, anyway.
Right. And it's like being developed by Dr. Poison and like General Ludendorff and who's like the main leader of the opposition in Germany. And everyone over there in the War Office is like, but we're about to sign an armistice with them. We're about to end the war. This is how we end the war. We signed this peace treaty and we're everything's all good. And Diana's all like, no, we got to go Ludendorff. He's like totally,
he's totally
Ares.
Ares, totally
Let's go
Ares.
kill Ares.
Yeah.
And everyone's like,
Look, audience, this guy's
how-
Ares. We're going to go kill him.
and everyone's like, how did she get in here? This is World War I era London. We don't let women in the War Office.
Yeah. Besides the secretaries.
Right.
with the telegrams.
But anyway,
Stationary and whatnot.
so all of like the big general people are like, no, Steve, you can't go do this mission. But one of the guys, Sir Patrick,
Mustache Man,
Sir Patrick, is all like, how about we do a secret mission where you go do some spying on Germans?
Take your multinational team.
Yeah, take your multi-ethnic background, like ragtag group of misfits, over to the German scientist
that
lab
you organically meet and run across
in a bar, because they're getting the team together.
Totally not like Captain America.
Very not. Very not.
But not the Howling Commandos. In name.
Yeah. I don't know if any of them are actually from the comics. I would not be surprised if they were or weren't. Anyway, so they get their team together and they head out to Germany to figure out what's going on with Dr. Poison, General Ludendorff, and all this secret, highly toxic gas.
Mm-hmm.
And so they trek across the battlefields and stuff, and there's this really great scene of Wonder Woman like walking across no man's land, deflecting bullets with her bracelets and stuff, and leading like a charge to retake the land
village,
this village, and they save the village, and it's really so like they just kind of have this adventure going headed toward that direction.
Mm-hmm.
They get to General Ludendorff's like castle or whatever,
and they're having some sort of gala.
There's this like ball to celebrate the armistice or something, or it's like in preparation for that. So they infiltrate that, and Wonder Woman like steals the dress off of one of the guests, and like walks in with a sword, just sticking in the back of her dress, ready to kill General Ludendorff. And they have this whole interaction thing, but during the party,
Chris Pine is like, "Don't do this."
Yeah, maybe don't kill him in front of everybody. Maybe like you're kind of crazy and Ares doesn't exist, because Ares is a Greek mythological figure, and even though I literally just came from the hidden paradise island of the Amazons, I'm still
Greek Wakanda.
But yeah, during the party, they bomb a village with the toxic gas, right?
The village they just liberated.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like, that makes them mad, and they're like, okay, the war's not gonna end. We need to go find where the gas is being produced and to blow it up. And they're like, okay, let's go do that. So Wonder Woman, Chris Pine, and their ragtag group of multi-ethnic background friends go and invade the
There's like this air base.
Where they're loading up a bunch of bombs onto a plane to drop on all the allies, because this is not the climax of
movie or anything
of specifically the first Captain America.
Bombs.
You see, they're going after London, not New York. It's totally different.
Bombs. Richer.
Anyway, she has a confrontation with Ludendorff,
right?
And
like
I think
Dr. Poison
gets kind of.
Dr. Poison had created this like steroid gas for Ludendorff. So now Ludendorff is like,
doesn't he
hopped up on purple gas?
Doesn't
with
he
purple
ice
eyes.
her or something?
No, I think Dr. Poison lives.
Okay,
she's like,
I forget what happened to her.
I mean, her mask breaks off when we see that she's like got scars
horribly
that she
disfigured.
feels like compelled to create a creepy mask for. But no, Wonder Woman has this confrontation with Ludendorff, who's all hopped up on purple smoke, and she kills him, and she's like, yes, I did it. I killed the guy. A war over, right?
But the war's not stopping.
The war's not stopping. And then like Mustache Man, Sir Patrick shows up inexplicably behind her, and it's like, yeah, mankind is just kind of mean like that. And she's like, where did you come from? And he's like, oh, I'm actually Ares. I'm actually the one pulling all the strings to make this war happen. But that's not my fault. I just give them ideas and tell them to do mean things, and they do it. It's not my fault. It's men who are mankind are the jerks here. And she's like, oh, come on, I'm gonna kill you with my God Killer sword. Stabs him and it doesn't work. And he's like, Oh, they never told you, right? The God Killer isn't some stupid sword. The God Killer is literally half god that it's you. Zeus and your mom did a thing, and that resulted in you. Therefore, you're the God Killer destined to kill me. So I'm gonna kill you first. How about that? How about them apples?
Yeah.
And so they have a big final act CG fight with like lasers and deflecting things with your magic bracelets and throwing lassos and such. And then Steve there's still the plane with all the gas bombs
It's about
and
ready
stuff.
to take off.
It's about ready to take off. Steve takes it over and he's like in the cockpit and he's like, you know what? I can't land this thing. I'm gonna do the
never can
World
land
War
the thing.
Steve in a plane thing.
Yep.
And sacrifice myself so that the gas doesn't get dropped on London and not New York. How about that?
Frickin' Steve's played by Chris's and planes. I tell you what, I just
tell
don't
you
know
what.
how to land the dang things.
Crashing this plane.
Yes. It was all
So
part of our plan.
So yeah, he blows up the plane with him in it. Wonder Woman gets the big sad, but then she beats the bad guy, and
The war's over.
then the war's over because the armistice is signed and stuff. But not necessarily because Ares is dead, because well, it turns out it's a little more complicated than Bad Man tell
Because World War
humans to
II
do
happens in like 15 years, roughly, give or take.
right. And so she lives through all that, and the ending.
Like
Smaller
11
mustache man this time.
Smaller mustache man this
Yes,
time,
much smaller mustache. Not Charlie Chaplin.
but similar in mustache.
Or is it Charlie Chaplin's fault the whole time? Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. Anyway, so that's more or less the summary of the movie. Very
Yes.
very loose, but
Yeah.
some cool stuff about it.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, it
Well-made film.
is well made. I would say that Aquaman was more fun to
Yeah.
watch, but I
Yeah.
think this one is built better as a story
It's
and
more
a movie.
heroic based.
Right.
Diana has this sort of innate heroism, like she seeks goodness and peace, like
And-
with all of her being.
But at first, it's in a very naive and optimistic way, where she's like, "Oh, there's good and there's bad, so I'm gonna go get the bad. Then good can be free, and we can all be happy, peaceful, and love each other again." And then she realizes, "Oh, yeah, people have flaws and problems and secrets, and it's a little more complicated than that. Even the ragtag group of multicultural background like guys that is Steve's squad, they all have their vices and they all have their backstories that are
Checkered past.
and have done things they're not proud of, and but she develops this kind of brothers in arms relationship with them. Despite that, she's like the first scene we get to meet them all in after the bar. They're having like this talk around the campfire about things they've done, and Diane's all like, "What? You've killed people because you were paid to?" And it's like, yeah, I did. You know, it's like,
And doesn't the Scott have like PTSD and like night terrors and stuff?
yeah,
too?
yeah. And so there's like, she sees firsthand this real dark place that humans kind of exist in, particularly in wartime, like that in No Man's Land, as she's going through the trenches and seeing all the shell-shocked guys, and she's all like, "This is
The kind of
very
hopelessness and dreariness.
right."
And
And
despair.
But in that, through her optimism and her hope for a better future, she like stands up and leads that charge and is this kind of icon of hope and peace and such.
It works for a bit
It does.
until a gas attack kills all the people she just freed.
Yeah, and then she gets mad and goes to
And
kill.
so there's sort of that crisis where like, you know, in her argument with Chris Pine, she's like, they're like debating whether or not like her ideas are just kind of naive and foolish. And even the movie sort of takes like a both end approach where it's like, yeah, she is a bit naive, but then at the end of the day, like she's kind of right.
Yeah.
She's
She-
sort of tempered with a little bit of reality.
You mix that optimism and hope and love with understanding reality. And she kind of just didn't have that perspective.
And learning to work with, and then she learns to work within that reality.
Right. Because after killing Ares and stuff, it's not like people instantly got better. In fact, things got worse, if anything. but she found ways to help deal with the evil in mankind without seeing it as so black and white, because people have problems.
And that's what she sort of sets her about doing in her now Wonder Woman role in the world.
Even though she lays low until Batman and Superman randomly get mad at each
about
other,
World
and then
War
she
II.
popped up. Yeah, she just showed up for like a brief stint in 1981, apparently, according to the sequel coming out, I think this year, maybe?
Maybe. Or is it early next year? It was supposed to be this year.
It was supposed to be this year.
Stuff happened.
And apparently Steve's not dead in that one, which is like, how
He's
does that
surely
work?
alive.
I was just about to do that one.
So I'm uncertain of the direction of future films in general for DC.
Steve's not dead too.
Die Harder. Anyway,
But yeah.
so that's kind of like the overarching themes, like
Yeah.
the
Good film.
Yeah.
It could have taken a really woke angle.
and there's a couple of scenes where it's like, oh yeah, that's the wokeness coming out. But it wasn't like overbearing about it. It was certainly present, and Wonder Woman has always been a bit of a feminist icon in the vein of Rosie the Riveter, as she came out at the same time. But I think it was handled very tactfully.
Yes. Her costume was a bit more practical than the traditional Wonder Woman. Bit like it was actually like armor based on real armor from
without like
something.
sacrificing the iconic look to it and the iconic color scheme. Sure, there weren't like stars on the skirt, and it wasn't literally just a skirt and halter top, but it was like it fit functionally in universe, but it was also like it fit the character. It looked like Wonder Woman. It was recognizably Wonder Woman. It's not like you go into something like the first X-Men film, it's like, oh, that's the X-Men suits.
And the fight scenes are pretty good because Gal Gadot actually was in the Israeli military for a brief stint, so she knows her way about hand-to-hand
Although
combat.
she was also like pregnant during the filming of many of those scenes.
So that's
so she like wore a green screen on her belly as, like, for several fight scenes, and they just photoshopped her abs in.
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, props to you for being a real Wonder Woman there.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Well, for
multiple
more
reasons.
than one reason, but yeah.
For a large
if in that position, yes, good on you. So yeah, I guess we want to dive into some transcendental analysis.
Spies.
Did you want to talk?
Oh, what did you like about the film? Riley,
I
before we
mean,
get
the
into
things I liked about the film, I guess we touched on and will touch on more in the transcendental bit. So let's hop
let's
into
just-
it.
all right. On that note, let's dive in. So, truth. What truths can we as Catholics take out of Wonder Woman? With a lasso of truth.
Right. the
Summarize the way things are, Wonder
glow
Woman.
stick
Forcibly extract truth.
Yes.
I think it's interesting how this movie frames. There's both like a tempter and a deceiver in the form of Ares, but also man's internal fallenness, and how both of those kind of work together. He exploits the fallenness of man to create great tragedy and
It's
great
interesting
like
how they
division.
placed it in World War I because it's not really morally black and white at all as a war.
Right.
Like, it's just chaos and death and destruction was all it really was over some relatively petty squabbles and prejudices. I mean,
the original Wonder Woman origin story is set in World War II because that's when she was written. But I think in terms of like this Ares plotline and the Great War-ness of World War I, because there was a whole lot of like technological advancements in war that people weren't ready for.
Yeah.
And so like the stand up 12 feet apart and shoot at each other that was working in the Civil War and Revolutionary War was not a thing here. No. It couldn't continue to be a thing, but they did that for the first part. And there was like a whole bunch of outdated war like strategies and techniques
that they're using
mixed with this newfangled technology, the gases and the tanks and stuff that really just led to a lot of unnecessary,
like hundreds of thousands of deaths
yeah.
for a few feet of ground.
And so it really, that particular war as a setting, they changed it, A, because they didn't want to look too much like Captain America, but B, because I think it really serves the story they wrote for Wonder Woman in this movie better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and also the morally gray kind of just almost petty squabble that World War I kind of was.
Mm-hmm. I think wasn't there kind of a moment where Chris Pine is like, I forget. I thought there might have been a moment, I forget, but where they're just kind of like, well, we got to win because we're the good guys or something like that.
Right,
Just
and
taking
Wonder
that for
Woman's all
granted.
like, but are we?
Yeah.
We're doing just as much awful killing as they are.
Yep. Which sort of encapsulates kind of the way that played out.
So it's like, on the one hand, it's war is very bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an awful thing. But also you got to fight war. It's like it's interesting because it's like this whole just war theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Which World War I didn't really squarely fit into. I mean, you can sort of make a case for England fighting under the pretext that the neutral Belgium got invaded, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. The Europe for a long time was waiting to get at each other's throats for a while.
And so that kind of gray fallenness of man
Mm-hmm.
and needing to
Be lifted out of
be
it.
lifted out of that by a figure of hope and love and
Mm-hmm.
all, like charity and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it's kind of
It's the big takeaway.
the big takeaway, and it really works.
Mm-hmm. And also exploring like sort of like at first she approaches things with naivete and has sort of a simplistic understanding, but it's not like she was wrong. She just didn't have
She just didn't have the nuance to apply it.
right, which is certainly true. Like because sometimes I know like growing up there are a lot of things I felt were very black and white, but then you get older and you realize things are a little more complicated. But that doesn't mean that those solid truths.
It doesn't mean truth isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you need to navigate
You need to find
the
it.
application of it
Mm-hmm.
in a way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so learning to like understand the fallenness of
Yeah.
man.
Because ultimately, Diana stays true to her purpose, but she has to learn how to navigate the murkiness of it all to do so.
Right.
As we all do in our own lives. Because sometimes it can be easier just like give up. It's like, it's too complicated. I'm just not going to take a stand and kind of wallow in this mucky conflict. Or stay true to truth and ideals. And while understanding the reality of things.
The weapon to end conflict isn't some blunt force instrument like a magical sword.
Mm-hmm.
It's a person.
Yeah.
It's you need to establish the personal connections and parse things out like morally through yeah it's
Yeah.
that's not all, folks. But
Skibbity-bop-and-dada.
any takeaways you have, Riley?
You stole mine.
Oh.
Just 5 seconds ago.
Oh.
The connection that the solution to the war is a person, not a weapon,
Uh-huh.
is like the sparkling, beautiful thing that Wonder Woman did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which was unexpected. That was sort of the real twist.
Right.
Like it was
I mean,
set up as
it
a twist,
wasn't really a twist,
but like if you
because-
think about it harder, it's like, oh yeah, I see how that coming. But it's like, but you know, when you really think about it, it's actually pretty cool.
and
that
honestly,
they did that.
I didn't really prepare that. It's just, it occurred to me just now. It's like, yeah, it's not some magical sword that'll save the day. You've got to.
Mm-hmm.
It's people.
Yeah.
It's people, man.
Because
War is people.
Yeah. Yeah. Goodness.
War and people.
Yes. What are some good things in the movie? Dun, 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 dun.
It's It's hard to talk about it without like just repeating
What
some
we
of the
just talked
truth
about.
stuff.
There's
I mean,
there's a lot of these things we do.
I like the personal connection that Wonder Woman ends up making with the ragtag group of multicultural backgrounded soldiers from Steve's platoon.
Yeah.
There's like over the course of like her travels with them, she learns their flaws and like helps them overcome their flaws. Because there's this one guy who is a cracked sniper but doesn't want to pull the trigger ever because of his PTSD and stuff. But like he, being inspired by Wonder Woman and all that she represents, overcomes his like personal block and fires a sniper round to save like Wonder Woman like in the decisive battle over that village. There's a lot of things like that where it's like it's not much. The characters in the ragtag group of multicultural backgrounded soldiers from Steve's platoon are kind of one note a little bit. They're but they do develop just enough that you feel there's more than the 3 personality traits are listed, you know?
Yeah. Shoot. I just thought. And it's gone.
Sorry, I
But that's
talked
okay.
too much about
Well, no, that's
the multiculturally backgrounded platoon of soldiers that Steve works with.
Yeah. Because there's like, there's like 3 of them? Or
There's
4?
like 4.
4? I forget.
The Scott, the sniper, the Indian guy, and I think there's one more.
Yeah. Stuff. Beauty. What is beautiful about the movie?
Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
I think that one of the very interesting aesthetic things they did with the film is set Wonder Woman in her bright kind of red, blue, and gold aesthetic against the bleak browns and grays of the World War I setting, particularly in that last fight with Ares, where it's in this just kind of gray concrete sort of airfield thing.
Where you contrast that with Themyscira, which is like bright, sunny, colorful.
It's Paradise Island.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she comes from this very colorful, very bright place, and she goes into this World War I, totally bleak, just gray. And
even
dark
London is
and
just
depressing.
laden with smog.
Smog and people. There's just sort of this general
People with
air
all
of
this
hopelessness and just sort of.
But she always stands out against that.
Yeah,
with her color scheme.
People
sort
are
of
trying to get her to fit in. She's like, no.
Both as a just an aesthetic device, but also sort of to highlight her character and her personality as being distinctly different.
Her indomitability and optimism in the face of...
and inspirational nature and all that.
Yeah. Very well done movie, special effects and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't go overboard like with Man of Steel or things like that. With the
Maybe
set
a little
pieces.
bit in the last battle, but
But it wasn't like, knocking entire buildings over per se.
Right.
It was just the standard explosions and whatnot. But
right. I will say, Wonder Woman's theme, like her musical theme,
yes,
is perhaps the best musical theme to grace cinema in the last decade.
possibly.
Quite possibly. I think it stands out as being just like it catches your ear when it comes up, and it makes you feel awesome when she just starts wailing on guys when it starts playing, and it's like, ooh. And it's like, I think it's played on like an electric cello. So it has this really weird like vibe to the main theme, where it's like deep and kind of powerful, but also like stringy and
Very
pretty and like
very energetic
high
and
energy,
wild.
and it's really cool.
Yeah.
I really dig it.
Yeah.
That was introduced, I believe, in Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman was probably the best. No, not Man of Steel. Batman v Superman.
Yep.
Of which Wonder Woman was probably the best part of.
Yeah. I guess other elements of beauty. Well, I suppose there's Chris Pine's sacrifice for the good of man.
Right.
as well to end the gas attack is maybe an element of goodness we overlooked, but
I wouldn't call that scene particularly beautiful.
no. Well, because there's like an explosion goes off and she can't hear him say goodbye.
That was actually a really kind of neat sequence.
Yeah, oof moment.
Because it kind of
Gotta
does
put
that.
her in the water. Oh wait,
It did that tinnitus ring thing when like all the sound cuts out except for that tinnitus frequency, and she has this little flashback or something happens where she's talking to him and you can't hear him clearly except you get the feeling that
What?
oh yeah, he's gonna go do it, isn't he?
what? Well, because at that point they'd sort of been at odds with each other, and then like he's like, I've got to go do this thing, so she doesn't.
They had been at odds with each other in a romantic tension sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah. But don't worry, guys. Steve's not dead. 2.
Something roaring like a lion, perhaps.
Not a tame lion, of course.
No.
No.
Wait.
Wait, now we're all over the place.
Now we're
getting our
mixing our
metaphors all sorts of
references.
mixed.
That really grinds my goat. As long as we're mixing references here.
Unity.
Brown.
Brown. But also the World War I theming, like we were talking about earlier. The fact that they placed it in World War I really fit
Yeah.
like everything they were
The
going
themes
for.
and motifs of the film.
And so I feel like the setting, also visually, right, with the with the brown.
Because it's a superhero movie, but it's kind of grounded in the human condition a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the best movies in general are grounded in the human condition,
For sure.
to varying degrees and in different ways. But this one, like, dealt with man's tendency toward violence and aggression toward one another,
And the necessity of heroes and people to draw them out of that.
right? And the necessity to make difficult choices when parsing out good from evil.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it really is united in its themes and its visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
There's a couple of scenes that are like, why are you in the movie? Let's just not.
It's like, of course you are, but why?
It's like, yeah, of course you are, because
Nothing
it's
like egregious but implied, more or less. It's
Yeah.
just like, this innuendo is totally unnecessary, but of course.
and there's only really like 3 scenes that I'm like, please just do something else.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, it's like, I like it.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Yeah, really solid, particularly compared to everything else that DC had been putting out in that decade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only thing that really is, I think Aquaman's definitely second place for just how fun it is.
Yeah.
But after that, you've got Suicide Squad.
You've got
Superman.
a ontological chasm between
Yeah.
the
right.
Deep
I mean,
Aquaman
Justice
and
League
everything
was
else.
fun enough, and there was a couple of good scenes in there, but it's like,
Man of Steel could have been great, but it did some weird things and decided not to.
We can talk about Superman as a character in a different podcast. That's an episode, I would say. Although I do want to
yes.
watch the original like movies first.
Yeah, like the Christopher Reeves ones.
Yeah, they're dumb and campy, but they're also fun because they kind of get
And then
it.
there was like the ones from like the early 2000s as well.
There was one
A
from the
singular
early
one.
2000s, and that acted as a sequel-ish to the Christopher Reeves one,
Ah.
but, like not starring Christopher Reeve. It
So
was
sort
somebody
of
else.
like the Edward Norton of the Supermans,
Yeah,
but reverse.
I guess. Anyway,
Yeah.
Superman Returns was a thing.
Yes. The only bit I've seen of that is him catching a plane.
Him catching a plane. I believe there's a scene in that we can talk about this later. but
Yeah.
there's-
We'll get. We'll get.
We'll talk about that later.
On that note,
On that note, where if we ever do that Superman episode we just alluded to perhaps doing in the future or past, depending on when you're listening to this, where can they find it?
they can find it on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. They can email us at palladiumpapist@gmail.com for questions, comments, concerns, and complaints or suggestions for future episodes. They can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Palapapis. for when we post and stuff like that.
When you remember to post
Yes.
stuff and like that.
Yeah. As we go, I mean, it's early December yet, but as we go into the new year, we're going to be taking a look at a few things with the podcast and seeing what we can do to improve it. And yeah, cool stuff.
So
if you want to
have
help this
input-
podcast grow, I don't know if you noticed, I listen to a lot of podcasts at work now. I'm not going to say any because competition, but at the same time, if you also listen to podcasts, you might notice just the number of ads you have to listen to. Note that we don't have ads on our podcast because this is A, a passion project, but B, we're cool like that. So
C, we don't have a big enough audience for any advertisers to even consider giving
Yes.
us an ad.
Right. So the only real way you can support the podcast is by inviting other people to listen and grow it that way.
So that maybe someday we have a listener base that is large enough to run ads on, and
Yeah.
then this announcement is completely irrelevant.
Yes. But if we do ads, we'll do them in a fun way so you're not annoyed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But good stuff. We thank you, the two of you.
We'll do ads in such a way they don't subtract.
Yeah. There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I have one final thought for the people.
All right.
I
Let's hear
just
it.
would love to hear a Bill Wirtz recounting of Wonder Woman history.
Bill Wirtz. The name sounds familiar, but
He's the guy who did History of Japan and History of the World.
oh yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
The sun is a deadly
yeah.
laser.
Good stuff. And like I looked at his channel once, and almost everything else on there is like 3 seconds long. It's just like little riffs. And
Hey,
stuff.
what's up? I'm still a piece of garbage.
Good stuff. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, or the two of you, the two Canadian listeners.
All
all,
two of you out there.
all two of you.
All
out
two
there.
of you.
The great two.
We
If we ever do
I
merch
thought we
someday,
I thought we established that we don't refer to individual members of the two, because the two is not in fact two anymore.
that is true.
It's just all
It
two
is
of
not.
you.
It is
If
not
we ever
two.
get into, like, the
it
merch
is not
thing
two
someday-
under the classic definition of two.
Yeah. So if we get into the merch thing someday, we're gonna have to do something with two.
I am one of the two.
Yeah, at least two.
Or if we have
No, no,
Patreon,
It takes
Not at least. There
Yeah.
are two.
Yeah,
there are two,
the
and there
master
always will
and
be
the
two.
apprentice. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.
Bye. Later.